Therefore, went ahead, and it's much easier just to become a lender of finance, would you believe? It's much easier to become a lender of finance than it is to take people's deposit. And the major difference there is that all of a sudden, because we don't take the people's deposits and work with that money, we're exempt from financial regulation. And believe me, even if you think borrowing money from an organisation like us or Clanquedo or whatever like that is difficult, it's a hell of a lot easier as it transpires than if you had to borrow from the banks. And some of the reasons we might touch on later on in the presentation. So, we went out, we got cash from different places, and I don't need to bore you with exactly where we got it, but we basically have assets of about 19 billion sterling at this stage. We recycled all that money, so we lent it all out twice. We've lent about 46 billion sterling at this point in time over the last 11 years. We started lending in 2009. So sorry, it's 13 years now at this stage, the time keeps catching up again. So we've done about 340 organisations both north and south of the border, and of that 46 million sterling, less than 3% of it has ever gone bad. And in actual fact, the one client, and there's one client that went bad, we didn't actually lend the money to them initially. We inherited a bad debt portfolio from another organisation as we started out. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, our background. We're a membership-based organisation. So any organisation here in this room today, or indeed any individual, can become a member of UCIT, just like you become a member of your local credit union. So that option is there, and you can become a member of our board and direct the future strategy of the organisation. Two types of products. Most of you will be familiar with a term loan, whereby you get a car loan or a mortgage or whatever like that. We give you money up front, and over a period of time you pay us back capital and interest repayments every month. Fairly straightforward. The point of that is the maximum term we do is 15 years for various reasons, and I won't get started right now. The other product that we provide is the bridging, and any of you that have had access to maybe sports capital grants or leader grants or something like that will have come across this idea that you have to pay a contractor or pay a consultant first to get a piece of work done, get a receipt off them, and then go in and get your grant claimed retrospectively. So the problem arises where in the name of God as a community you're going to come up with 50, 60, 150, 2 or 300,000 euro to pay somebody before you can actually go in and get your grant. But we will provide that cash up front, and therefore you will provide us interest-only repayments over a period of time until such time as you draw down the grant, and then you make a repayment to us. So that's the sort of idea behind the bridging loan. Very handy indeed. An awful lot of rural development programs, projects over the last couple of years probably wouldn't have succeeded without the access to bridging finance. Not just from ourselves, but that's one of our products. The amounts that we generally lend are between 30,000 and $500,000. Why? $500,000, we maximise our exposure in terms of risk on any one particular project at $500,000. We buy our money externally from a wholesale lender as well if we don't use it off our own balance sheet. Their maximum exposure is 500,000, so that kind of correlates. The minimum amount, we don't charge an arrangement fee for our term loans. So therefore we would do as much work on a 30,000 euro loan that we would pay over 12 months as a $500,000 term loan over 15 years. So to be honest, we just try to cover our costs. If we were to lend 5,000 to your group or 10,000 to your group and we would pay it back over 2 or 3 years, the amount of money that we would make on that versus the risk associated with it would just kind of be a negative. And so we've put that floor in of 30,000 euro. Now I've loaned less than 30,000 euro. Okay, it's not set in stone, but generally speaking, that's the sort of parameters that we deal with. I've put up there an average lending rate of 6%. And to be honest, a lot of you say, oh my God, 6% is enough for that. When you think some of the contract trackers in this country, residential mortgages could be as low as 0.5 or 0.75 or 0.8% or something like that. To be honest, I would say compare apples with apples. If you have a community group and you're trying to get access to credit and you can get into a bank and they can give you a better deal than that, well then fair play to you. You do not need an investor like UCIT. Okay, we exist. Remember, we exist because the banks weren't providing the access to the credit for the social organisations. Okay, so if the banks won't lend you the money, then you can come to us. All right, we're not here to compete with them. Also, I would say average, and I would say it's negotiable at 6%. If I make an offer to a group of 6% and they come back and say, Donald, you know what? I think we've got an offer at 5. I say, show me the offer. Show me the offer. Show me the letter of offer. Let me take a look at it. And if it makes sense, I'll match it. I won't undercut anybody else, but I'll match it if it makes sense. So I'm all about, as I say, developing relationships with the clients. I want to be there as a point of contact throughout the process and after the term is out until it's matured. So that's the sort of things that we're looking at. There's no penalties for early redemption or lump sum payments. And I suppose from here on in, you think about the credit union. The credit union, your car loan with the credit union. And you think that your repayments on a monthly basis are stacked, regardless of what happens. You're going to pay your 200 or 250 euro a month over 5 years, or whatever that might be. You know exactly what's coming out of your cash flow on a monthly basis. But like that, if you won the lotto or the local GA lotto, whatever like that, 10,000 euro, whatever it might be, and you wanted to throw up and clear the loan in the morning, The credit union would allow you to do that and it wouldn't charge you a penalty. Okay, so very much like that, that is the way our loan is structured. Interest is calculated on a reducing balance. Again, you're talking about the credit union money. So every month that you pay that €300 or €400 a month, at the start you pay an awful lot of that as interest, very little capital, and every month that passes, you pay less and less and less interest, and more capital comes off the principal that you borrowed. The repayment amount remains static throughout the loan unless agreed by both parties. So again, that's coming to it. A bank might offer you a loan of 5%, and you say, well, that's better than a loan at 6%. But then that bank could be a very good rate, and in 6 months, for no real reason at all, only we're scared our profits might be damaged, we'll raise the interest rate to 6.5%. And that's fine, that's grand, only the amount of money that you generally would have to pay back on a monthly basis will increase, and your cash flow goes out of kilter, and all of a sudden you're in debts. Whereas regardless of interest rates double, treble, quadruple, although we hope that will never happen, your monthly repayment will remain the same, as it would in any credit union. Okay? How do we get our money back? We will extend the term of the loan towards the end. So it's a 10-year loan. And interest rates have gone sky high through it, so you actually owe us more than, beyond the maturity date, but then we will continue to take repayments off you until such time as we clear your loan. Okay? So that's the business end of things. Okay, that's the business end of things, that's the nuts and bolts. What I've done over the next couple of slides, and I am going to try and go through it very, very quickly. There's 3 areas that we look at: the borrower, the type of people that come to us, and the project itself, what they're proposing, and finally a financial analysis. Because at the end of the day, all these things have to make economic sense. All of these things have to make economic sense. And this whole idea of not-for-profit is a joke. You have to make profit. And Tina said it splendidly there earlier on. She has to make money, or staff don't get paid. It's what is done with the profit that counts. And this whole idea as well, in terms of, I think the Karen Wright was saying, you develop a reserves policy. You put money in the bank and you keep it there for a rainy day. Because it's a hell of a lot easier using your own reserves to reach the sort of grants that I spoke about earlier on than trying to go through the process of applying for a loan, paying interest, taking a risk, and everything that's associated with that. So these are all sorts of things that come up. And again, I've changed this presentation. I had a different presentation to show you about an hour ago. I've changed because a lot of the stuff I was doing, Caroline has touched on it. I didn't want to be replicating. Okay, so the borrower, the thing about the borrower is, it's very, very important that you understand what your rules are. We have 2 types of borrowers, really, to be quite honest. You have a limited company, and then you have groups and clubs and associations that aren't limited. Okay? And we have no problem. We can deal with both in equal measure. There's no problem. Limited companies will have directors, and they generally have in their memorandum and articles of association the power to borrow. Straightforward. But 80 to 90% of the clubs and associations that will come into you, committees that will come into you and want to borrow money, will not have that power to borrow in their constitutions. It will not be set out in their rules. And they're coming to you at the last minute in desperation, looking for 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, €1,000. And then you find out, and they're like me yesterday, and then you read their constitution and say, guys, you don't actually have the authority to borrow, you can't. Now, it's very easily rectified. It's very easily rectified. You rectify it after a meeting. But it is one of the things that they don't bear in mind. And the other thing, and it probably comes down here somewhere, I'm not going to stick to the slides too much, but basically the other thing is that every committee needs trustees to do 2 things. One is to borrow. If you've got an organisation and you do not have trustees, they're not legally entitled to borrow. That's not to say that the banks or some other lender has not given that committee money in terms of it all at some stage. I'm saying that particular committee is in a very strong position to get into a default scenario. Because the lender really has very little recourse in getting that money back. Because it should have lent it to trustees. Okay? The other thing that trustees are required for is if you're dealing with property. So if you're taking over a lease or you're buying property or anything like that on behalf of the association, it's the trustees that have to buy it. It's not the committee. So that's just a little thing just to bear in mind. They're very boring documents, memo and articles and trustee constitutions, but they're all very, very important. Okay. Then we look at the history of a client, and I suppose our clients, and I've got a little video. We've got about 4 or 5 minute video towards the end of this to give you an example of our clients. But our clients are you. Okay. I don't have to stand here and explain to you what community enterprise is. I think you're all very well au fait with exactly what that model is. Okay. And in terms of the sort of clients that we deal with, we rule nothing in or out as long as our clients they're legal and instituted, that they're led by a group of volunteers, that the profits are reinvested into the organisation, that basically that there's no shareholders making any money out, okay, and that there's a community impact. And after that, we'll analyse it, okay. So when we're looking at an investment proposal, we take a look at the background of this organisation. Some of them are brand new, there's no history to look at, so it saves a bit of time. But The ones that do have the history, we look and see, well, where have they come from? Where have they come from? And that's a very important one, because sometimes you come across an organisation whereby you've got this guy with a midlife crisis in the middle of the community that says, oh my God, I could die any day now, and if I die, nobody will remember me within the community, so I need to build a big monstrosity of a building, and everybody remembers the John Smith building when they're walking up the road. And that sort of then gets a railroad rent a crowd in and say, look, if you all come together, we look like we have a great impression here, we get money drawn down from funders, and we get investment from the likes of UCIT, and they'll think the whole community's behind it. And you know straight away that when the money's gotten, the bricks start going up, that really the rest of the community aren't really in it at all, and John Smith's left on his own, and the thing's going to fall flat in its face. And in 10 years' time, what you'll have is you'll have plaster dropping off walls and damp all over the place, nobody in the place, and then people are saying, oh, there's John Smith's legacy now, look at it. And that's fine. That would be all right to an extent if it was just granted that we come to it. But if you have a community taking on debt, which is where we come in, if you have a community taking on debt, things become a hell of a lot more serious for the communities and the organisations surrounded. So that's why we want to make sure that there's community buy-in. There's community buy-in, that there's a community demand. There's a community demand for the sort of stuff that's been done. We would also suggest that when we're looking at to disclose all trouble patches the organisation has overcome, has encountered and maybe overcome over the period of time. Because the chances are, well, I know everybody in this room through 2 degrees of separation. I won't know you personally. But if I'm going to meet you or your group, the chances are I'll be able to ring somebody, or talk to somebody, or email somebody that knows you, that knows of you. And I'll find out about your history. So your best bet is to tell me about it before I find out about it. One guy rang me one day and he wanted to borrow €350,000 to develop a project. And the project itself was grand. Okay? You do a bit of Google research in this organisation, and the first place the guy pops up is in Stubbs Gazette for tax evasion. Now, I kid you not, that's exactly where he popped up. It's first. Now, look at, there is nothing, look, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being in Stubbs Gazette. It's not great, not ideal. It happens, get over it. People have checkered past, once you deal with that, it's fine. You should have said it. Or, you shouldn't have been the guy that the group decided to send to me looking for investment. Okay? So these are the sort of things you need to bear in mind. Where there are governance issues, highlight. I mean, I have a case where we actually loan money to this group, and while we were doing the appraisal process, we discovered, they volunteered to us, that their past manager deferred them a €76,000 over a 4-year period. It happens. The board then changed, a number of checks and balances were put in place, and they've overcome that situation. But where there are governance or have been governance issues, highlight them, make them known to us, and we will be able to deal with them then. I put the OBC in the website in there, the Office of Director of Corporate Enforcement. For those of you who don't know it, I'm sure most of you have come across them. They're a bit like revenue. They're great guys to help you when you're proactive, and reactive is not so good. Okay, so just to bear that in mind. Then we look at the board. And the board, we distinguish between the board and the actual working committee. The working committee do all the work, and the board, that's where the buck stops. So it's 80-20 again, but the responsibility will lie with the board. And likewise with trustees and committee members. Trustees may not be doing anything. They may just be dormant trustees, sitting at home, watching the television, not interested at all, but at the end of the day, they've got the responsibility. So we need to remember where the authority lies. Individual reputation is very important. Relevant expertise versus rent a crowd. I went down to a group one day and 18 people came to meet me. 18 people. I've never seen them like since, or indeed before, and I'm not sure, the guys must have went around with a hailer in the town the day before saying it was coming, please attend this meeting. But no, that's the sort of stuff, you want to make sure that the people that are there, and you see this requirement for business acumen. So if we're providing loan finance to the extent that we do, we'd like to think that there's somebody on the committee, on a working committee, that has a kind of a business acumen, or especially financial expertise. So if it's somebody working in a local bank, a local accounting firm, accounts technician, things like that, people that are able to handle money and that have some sort of kind of a background in doing so. I have here community reps versus organisational reps because they're another kind of couple of subsets of two subsets of the types of clients that we have. You can have the local parish, the local GA club, the local soccer club, boxing club, whatever it might be, or community centre, right? That would come and they're backed by an organisation, they're backed by a parish or a parochial community. Just they come in. If something goes wrong during that term or that loan, you think to yourself, you can shake buckets sort of thing. Now, shake buckets, I use the term very loosely, that's not on the terms of fundraising, but they can fundraise and they'll be able to gather a few pounds together to get them out of difficulty. The organisational reps, who may come up with a very good project, a good social enterprise, are normally, you're going to look at the likes of the local county council, city council, whatever, HSE, VEC, Enterprise Board, whatever you can throw at them in terms of statutory organisations, they'll all come in with their own expertise and know-how and saying, look, do you know what, from our research and our know-how, this is what this community needs. And it might be what this community needs. But we have to be very conscious that if that sort of an organisation gets in, if that sort of a project gets into difficulty, where are you going to get the money paid out? Because you might be asking the VEC or the council to go back and see if you can find 30 or 40,000 euro, because it ain't going to happen. And, you know, if the council officials, and no disrespect to you, go out and start collecting buckets, right? After a fella's after paying his property tax or whatever like that the previous week or month, you know, it's going to be difficult to get that money into the bucket. So we, you know, there are some great projects, don't get me wrong, but there's an extra risk that we have to bear in mind as well. And finally then, board batch I was only talking to Chris right there before I came this morning, and it's very handy for deficiencies in your board. There's been management executives up and down the country looking to get involved in your boards on a voluntary basis. So it's a good kind of networking site for that. Okay, organisational structure. Very briefly, we just want to know that there's a kind of a set line of reporting structure in place within the organisation. Because I've seen the two extremes. Personally, I manage one community enterprise where our board met every Monday night, Hilson or Shine, no problem, every Monday night. The second one I went to manage, I met my board twice in a 12-month period, right? So there's the two extremes. And then I've also seen whereby groups employ managers and then dictate to them, micromanage them, hold the reins and allow no initiative whatsoever. You know, that's detrimental. And then I've seen managers come into organisations and put board members in hospital. That's not funny, by the way. That's not supposed to be a joke. It might be the tone of my voice, but it's quite serious. Okay? And so you have that problem, and you know, I don't know if Hub will have a fund there for health costs for board members coming into hospital. But this is it. So I've seen the two sides of it, and it ain't pretty. Alright? And so then as well, hey look, we want to be sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is at. One group rang me, Dad met me, I'd say I was talking to them for about 3 months, and then all of a sudden I get a call from somebody from their organisation wondering, have you ever heard of us and would you be able to lend us money? You know, where have they been for the last couple of weeks? Then that's the back, and that's the board, and you find out the committee, they're back and stuff like that. You know, you do a bit of investigative research. Someday, if I lose this job, I get a job Sunday or something like that. But business plan. Do you have one? About the business plan, and you know, I looked very arrogant that I walked out in the middle of Caroline's talk earlier on. I found the first 15-20 minutes was great, and then I had to go out and get more cash from the parking outside, right? And that's why I left. But it was great. It was really brilliant. A lot of community groups have come to us and they don't have a business plan. I don't expect them to go off and spend 5,000 or 10,000 with a consultant to get a business plan in place, because a couple of things might arise. Number one, the consultant will charge the 10,000. What they'll do is they'll copy one they've done somewhere else and just change the name. And somewhere down the line they'll see they've forgotten to change one name, and it's Tesco here instead of, you know, whatever community resource centre. So that doesn't cut the mustard with us. And the other reason behind it is because the community don't really know what's going on in that business plan. The community, so don't worry, don't put any limitations on it, just stick up. Now back then it was, we'd love a kiosk in the middle of the village, you know, or maybe with insulation on the water pump. And you know, so they have to, but there were brilliant things, because all of a sudden the community would decide what was going in here, and the community would know, and everybody was agreed, and then prioritise the work that had to be done. Now they have to be obviously updated, but that, unfortunately, a lot of them are lying on shelves now and forgotten all about it, and you have these external agents coming in and saying, this is what we think you should do. And they're like, will you give us any money? Yeah, we will give you a couple of 100,000, but you have to borrow a couple of 100,000 as well. Oh, that's fine. Well, once we're getting the grant, sure, it'd be terror if the Valley Boys got across the hill, you know, and you're in Kilmascully here, we have to take this grant to do this and borrow this money. So all those things would be very, very careful. Chasing funding for a viable project just in case, you know, it'd be shameful if the grant passed. Pricing, you've touched on already, just make sure, and the team has spoken about it as well, you know, make sure you're charging the right things from different competition, who's doing what. Great thing about community groups, generally they're not as territorial as private businesses. They like to network, they like to share experiences, until it comes to getting grants. And then all of a sudden, if you know about a grant, it's like, you know, social finance, which I'm going to talk about at some stage, social finance is completely different. There's no competition. Everybody's there on their own merits. There's loads of money. Alright? There's about 100 million euro there, so there's no shortage of it, okay? And it keeps coming back on a revolving basis. So it's not like once it's gone, it's gone, it's everything. So what works and doesn't work is a good thing. You'll be able to talk to, if we've got 300 odd clients, we'll be able to put you in a peer network. We'll be able to touch base on Irish Social Enterprise Network as well as another good organisation to get involved in terms of finding out what works and doesn't work in different parts. Identify your unique selling points would be a little bit different. I know there's a limit to unique selling points in certain community organisations, but try and be big. Beware of market saturation. And the little story I have on this is very, very simple. It's back in the 80s, you knew that everybody, everywhere, in every parish in the country had a heritage centre. A heritage centre? Why? Because if you died then, all of a sudden the community was wiped out. God forbid, in one sense, that happened. There'd be no heritage left. And so everybody's like, sure, look, we build a heritage centre. And all they're doing now really is just using up lightly, to be quite honest, insurance, with the cost of insurance. So then that moved on, then enterprise centres became the new thing. And look, up in Dublin, I'm looking up here, there's a couple of vacant units up around the industrial estates here. When you go into the west of the country, which is, where my parents are from and stuff like that, and even Cavan, where I'm from, you'll see these idle buildings lying about, and you're like, oh no, I think that there's a story behind every one of them. So enterprise centres then, because there was loads of money being thrown in terms of granting, so they were built fine. They're not there for them anymore. And then the next thing out of the minute is AstroTurf pitches, because everyone thinks they're doing AstroTurf pitches. Isn't that right? Yes. Schools, gay public clubs, soccer clubs, the works. Everybody wants an AstroTurf pitch. Now, I don't have a problem with AstroTurf pitches. I played Gaelic football for 30 years, and towards the end of my career, I was thinking maybe we should just practice to play in muck. Because there is no grass in it. Alright? So we've got AstroTurf pitches now, and that's fine. But not if they're supposed to be a saving grace for an organisation in terms of they're going to generate us enough money to get out of difficulty. Because it doesn't really work that way. Because you need kind of football. And once in a while. So I can't wait to see what the next fad is. I might start investing in the women and the heads. magazines as well to see what the next trend is going to be. Alright, so then we move on to project costs and funding. Because this is straightforward enough. This is like maths that your 6-year-old will be doing in school. Okay? 1 + 1 = 2. Very quick joke about this one. An accountant, when you're choosing any accountant in the room? Just the one? Just the one. Well, here, just in case. Right. So when you're looking for an accountant, you go and you ask the accountant, what's 1 and 1? And if the accountant tells you the answer is 2, don't hire that person. Why? Because you knew the answer yourself. So you don't need that. You could do the work yourself. If you ask them what 1 and 1 is, and they say 3, don't hire that person either, because why? That's all right. Correct answer. You can't even add. She can't even add. So if you say what's 1 and 1, or ask what's 1 and 1, and they can reply with, what do you want 1 and 1 to be? That's the perfect answer. So anyways, get back to this. With 2 parts of this table. The top is the cost. So we want to know exactly how much this little project here is going to cost. In cash terms. Okay? And then where are you going to get the money to pay for it? So in cash terms, things like VAT. I had some group one day, actually, yeah, €60,000 VAT, but they're going to pay it back to us anyway, so we'll not think about that. No, hold on, you have to pay this money out first. So things like that, and engineering fees, design costs, maybe connecting up to electricity, all this sort of stuff. You're down to furniture costs. There's not much point in building it up in a community centre if you've got no tables, chairs, footing it. You expect people to come in and stand around it all the meetings. Things like that. So down to the bottom line, exactly what, all in, what does it cost? And then we look at funding. And again, it's hard cash. So you may have a letter of grant offer. You may have, may not. You'll have IBAR loan there, it could be an investor's loan. And this thing is very important to consider. And it's important to consider today, for every group here. Not about someday down the line when you think about you might want to borrow money. It's from here on in, you consider this really. The financial contribution from the community to the project costs. It is 100% mortgage, over as you all know. This thing about developing a reserves policy and fundraising for that rainy day is extremely, extremely important. Why? Because it's time consuming. So if you come to me in 12 months or 18 months time and say, Donal, remember hearing talking about Blanchetown there about 18 months ago, we're thinking about embarking on a project for only €150,000 and we might have to put 50,000 in ourselves. And have you got that? No, but we'll raise it. Now, how long are you going to raise it? Look, when the thing is built, we'll raise it because it'll be easy to fundraise for something that's already built. That's a load of baloney. That won't work when you're cutting mustard. So today is what I want you to consider, from if nothing else, from this talk, start fundraising, start development of a war chest. Okay? And there are different ways of doing that. But anyways, obtain documentary evidence for all trips involved. What that means is that if you've got a tender process, you'll have a contract, a tender contract. Or you have quotes from engineers or QSs or whatever it might be. But don't be picking these numbers out of the sky like somebody in Anglo-Irish would have done back in the day. Do you know what I mean? Make sure that there's some sort of documentary evidence to back them up. And likewise, if you're going to get a grant, if you've got a grant, that's fine, show it to us. But, you know.
Donald, you've got 10 minutes top, yeah?
Brilliant, flying. That's excellent.
Okay, good, I'm
we're actually ahead of schedule. Fundraising strategy, so this is what I was talking about, okay? Do you have one? If you don't have one, do think about it, do consider it. Because it's not rocket science. You're not talking a 10 or 20 page, booklet. It's a one-pager. One-pager setting out how much money do we need to raise, alright, this year. What are we going to do to raise it? What are the different things? When are we going to do them? How much do we realistically want to, attract in terms of funding from each one of them? And who's going to do it for us? Because we might have a clue, we might not have a clue about that particular type of fundraising, but there could be somebody within our community, not necessarily within the organisation, but out there that would have experience in doing this sort of stuff that we can bring on board. Make sure the targets are financially and time-wise realistic. I don't know why I've got earning reverse corrected there. I haven't clue. My mind's in another place. I'm sure there's a reason for it. Reserves policy, I've mentioned it already. Bridging grant, it's very useful to the reserves policy to bridge grant aid quickly. If you've got €40,000, 40,000 or 50,000 euro, and I know it's a lot of money, but if you've got 40,000 or 50,000 euro, you can actually bridge grants of about 200,000 euro with that money at no cost, at no expense to yourself. Because if you go to borrow money, you have to consider there's the interest rate cost. For bridging, there's probably an arrangement fee. Somebody's going to have to legally review your governance documents, and so there'll be a legal fee. So all these things I wouldn't find 1,000 or 2,000 euro creeping up on me very quickly, And then there's the time and the process of putting an application and waiting for drawdown and all that sort of stuff. Whereas if you've got a reserves policy, it's much easier to get. Everything that we do in UCIT, since we were established, every investment that we've made must have a social impact, and what's more, it must be immediate.